Check 1 2. Ready to go?
Okay, thank you. Hello? Maybe just a little bit, not too much. I don't want my... Hello? Okay, good. Hello, everyone. We're delighted to have you join us today, virtually and in person. Just to give you a little background about Aeon Collective, we are a non-profit waqf that produces, curates, and disseminates fact-based and culturally informed knowledge around sustainability. We're pleased to announce our own flagship urban community building program today, known as the Tree Library. Following that, we'll be having 2 discussion panels. Session 1 on leveraging data for climate action. The other one is going to be covering the report, the State of Climate and Health Research in the GCC, which has been 2 years in the making. We hope for this effort to ignite a focused interest on the topic and the region. Without further ado, I'll be handing the discussion over to our co-founding partner, Msha'al, who will be leading the conversations moving forward. Thank you.
Start with our friend Andrea, who'll give us a bit of an insight on a poll. We want to track throughout the day your engagement with the topic of climate and climate change and climate policy and action. So you're both welcome to join the poll. Andrea, if you want to give a bit of an overview.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Andrea. I work for Accurate. I have had the pleasure in the last months to collaborate with Aeon on many projects. So first of all, thanks for inviting us here and for giving the opportunity to give our contribute to your projects. And Accurate is a data visualization, design and development studio. So first of all, today I would like to take the chance to have all of you here and many people connected from remote to launch sort of experiments. And as you can see on the screen, you can connect to the website that you read on the bottom, or just through the QR codes. And as soon as you connect to the website, you will land on a very, very simple survey that asks you some questions related to your approach to climate action. Our goal of this is to create a sort of collective data visualization, data portrait that is generated by all of your answers. You will always be able to recognize your own answer on the screen, but the idea at the end is to have a sort of flag that represents not the individuality, but all the community that today is joining these events. Maybe this will be more clear later, after the next session. But in the meantime, while you answer, you will see the collective data portrait evolving, and we will jump back to it later.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So today I'm going to talk to you about our flagship program that we'll be launching on the Tree Library. As you can see on the screen, it's essentially an abstraction of the word tree and the word library. But what we're trying to create with it is a community-led space for this concept that our friend Professor Carlos Duarte has pioneered, that we're calling planetary repair. We want to go beyond being reactive to the situations that collectively we've put ourselves into, and more towards pragmatic, collective, action-oriented work on the active repair of our planet. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Just to give you a bit of a context around why we felt there was a need to create a program like that of the Tree Library, there's been a lot of announcements over the past few years, either on the local, regional, or global level, of a lot of tree plantation efforts, a lot of efforts that are looking into this active regeneration of ecosystems. One of the main issues that we've flagged throughout is that sometimes they happen in different vacuums without connecting to the efforts of one another. Sometimes they're counterproductive. So while they're trying to solve for the climate issue, for example, with the carbon sequestration, they end up being creating further issues on the biodiversity side of the equation. So monocultural trees, for example, have been signaled as a way of essentially destructing a lot of our forests. As well as maybe what I'll allude to a bit later is this hidden layer of where a lot of the really cool activities that end up happening within the forest that we're also using almost as a parallel, but I'll talk to it in a bit. Before further ado, maybe I'll cut off to our friend who was not able to be with us, unfortunately. She's a champion of progressive urban planning with a lot of decades of experience, where she continued to push out-of-the-box thinking, calling for community-led initiatives towards urban development. Her Honorable Maimouna, the Executive Director of UN Habitat, will give us a bit of a brief around the state of the policy. And maybe I'll further elaborate on the detailing of our program right after that. So, Honorable Maimouna.
Very good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to speak at such an event and on such an important topic for UN Habitat. Worldwide, 70% of cities are already dealing with the effect of climate change, while the Earth faces the triple planetary crisis, climate destruction, biodiversity loss, and pollution. In many locations, including countries in the Arab region, climate change is contributing to humanitarian crisis where climate hazard interacts with high vulnerability. Numerous cities are facing a higher frequency and severity of disasters, including droughts, floods, landslides, and dust storms. Cities are also on the front lines of the climate change battle, and there is growing awareness that the climate battle will be won or lost in cities. Urban development, when done right, can be a force of positive transformation to ensure resilience and equity. Addressing the multitude of risks and vulnerabilities facing urban areas requires adopting effective policies and planning strategies. UN Habitat maintains extensive expertise in supporting national and local governments in addressing urban-related climate change issues. UN Habitat has been implementing urban climate projects in more than 100 cities worldwide and is continuously providing capacity buildings and technical cooperation to contribute to the implementation of the Paris Agreement, utilizing communities' information to complement the technical knowledge of experts UN Habitat focuses on participatory urban planning and design processes. One intervention adopting a community-led approach is the block-by-block methodology. It aims to develop local policies, plans, and design for safe, inclusive, and green public spaces for all through participatory design using the popular Minecraft game. UN Habitats also implemented the participatory City Resilient Action Planning tool, launched in Africa and replicated in Jordan as a step-by-step participatory resilient planning methodology. This tool includes a set of training exercises and activities targeting municipal authorities, communities, and local stakeholders to specifically address the issue of flash floods in downtown Amman. UN Habitat is ready to provide technical support to Saudi Arabia in its plan related to the greening and sustainability of cities, such as the Saudi Green Initiative, Green Riyadh Initiative, and others. This project demonstrates the Kingdom's commitment to reduce and mitigate the climate change impact, and UN Habitat commends these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to further elaborate, maybe it could be seen as weird as a desert, mostly desert country to be leading an effort on tree plantations. The same on pushing out a program that's called the Tree Library. Well, I'll give you a bit of an insight around my inspiration and that of my colleagues around the idea of the Tree Library. Some part of it is personal, some part of it is more on the policy side. From the personal side, it was more of a question of history with my grandmother. Growing up, there was this corner of our home that was a very productive garden. All sorts of fruits in the middle of Riyadh that are usually grown in a cooler temperature in a place like Taif, for those of you who are familiar with Saudi Arabia. They were delicious. I was constantly struck by that norm in the middle of the desert. But what I've learned is that over time, when she grew tired, that same place turned and the same trees that were productive and fruit-bearing replaced by decorative trees. So that was a huge loss that I wanted on a personal level to revive and to create the space where we could ideate around it. So that evolved into a conversation with our friend Ali Dawood, who leads architecture at Aeon. How do we design a space where people can congregate, let their guards down, and actually talk, have a dialogue, as opposed to talk at one another, as opposed to debate ideas, and active in a proactive dialogue? The other source of inspiration, honestly, came from a trip in Costa Rica, where I met my friend who you'll see later today, Andy. And we were walking around these primary forests, and he was pointing towards this really cool mushroom. I was thinking of our other friend, Colin, who's a good friend of the Tree Library program, and thinking, wow, well, is this edible? And what is this mushroom? In essence, it's a translation of this deep network, the mycelium, under the surface, right above the roots, where trees talk to one another. So you could see that within a forest, within a primary forest, there's this big tree, that was the mother tree, that was essentially sending out nutrients to whatever tree in this primary forest needed it, when it was needed it. So what we wanted to try and recreate around the globe is this effort of a mycelium, one that's rooted in culture, where we're understanding the cultural nuances and the differences between one place to the other, but where we could be champions of one another, acting like a unified primary forest, jumping to the aid of one another when there's a need, be it on the actionable optimism. I think there's a lot of talk that's putting a lot of stress on the mental health side of the equation. We're almost feeling like we have nothing to do or to act or to add. Talking a lot about these goals and targets of 1.5, these 2-degree targets. These are projections, these are political targets, when in reality, this is almost scaring us out of action. So we wanted to create a space where we're reviving the sense of ownership of our destiny, of our future, and getting our youth ignited around some of these solutions. We also wanted it to be a space of symbiotic relationship. A lot of what we hear in the technical sphere is this tech transfer or know-how transfer. It's usually done from developed to developing world. when in reality there's a lot of know-how that we're not fully capitalizing on from some of the small tribes around the globe or countries that are in low-lying islands, for example. And we've done a lot of work on the coral reef side of the equation, and that's a space where we need to be humbled time and time again when we're coming with all of these tech solutions, and then talking to a country like Palau, where they've done a lot of these innovative things 10 years ahead of us. So there's a lot of knowledge for us to learn back and relearn from these locations. The other, and sincerely, and this is where I think relying on a really solid friend and a partner like Curates helps a lot, is building up something that's beautiful, both in the physical realm, but also on the website. And eventually, I'm not going to use this as a buzzword, I promise, but when the time is right within the metaverse of creating this beautiful, scalable, and importantly, bankable space for this kind of action, so you're funding the right kind of efforts. And at the center of all of this is human-centric well-being to develop all of this good know-how. So next, please. So we see this through the lens of planetary repair. I know I mentioned it, but I want to take a second to explain what that means. It's essentially a human-centric, culturally nuanced approach to fix our planet. Too often do we see the solutions are either targeting climate or biodiversity or poverty or hunger. We see this as an opportunity to go beyond, to actually not put multidisciplinary people around the globe that are having a hard time of interconnecting, or people from different disciplines sitting next to one another, talking at one another. We want this to be an effort where we're trying to get the brightest minds together to solve for really complex problems. Complexity, in my opinion, is beautiful. Oversimplification can be extremely dangerous. And the question is, how do we translate something to something that's complex, as opposed to too difficult to wrap your head around it? And we see us being able to achieve that through creating a space for interconnected dialogue, an ability to build up communities, creating active and solid programs for ecosystem restoration and preservation. I'll give a quick example. The first few locations that we'll be launching across the globe will be located around the Red Sea, close to Saudi Arabia. So where we're leveraging the know-how of hubs that we're creating in universities like KAUST, in the city of the future like Neom, to connect it to Bor Sudan, to connect it to Egypt. I mean, when I'm eating my favorite fish in Jeddah, that fish starts its life in Bor Sudan. If I'm not protecting, for the simplest selfish reason of wanting to eat my favorite fish, then I should be investing quite heavily in a place like Sudan. It's not that I'm trying to help them, that they are helping me in essence, and we're helping one another. So we're trying to build up this kind of a network, focusing primarily around the Red Sea, but then going from the Red Sea beyond. And this needs to be treating this kind of a place as a living lab. So where you can bring in most of the information, the data on the different kinds of trees, the different kind of interventions within the metaverse. Why not have a floating whale that you've protected in the middle of the high seas? I see no limitations for where we could go with something like this, but we do not want to predetermine it. So this is part of the equation that's a bit difficult for people to understand, is that people like to see simple models and then replicate them around the globe. I think that this is what's wrong with our system. We need to elevate a system of thinking to connect to different geographies around the globe and figure out what their priorities are. And then how can we connect them to this forest? How can a place in Riyadh come to the aid of Bor Sudan? How can a place in New York come to the aid of Tokyo? This is the kind of ecosystem that we're trying to create. Next, please. And finally, this is a teaser of a teaser, in essence. We're launching the first physical site of the tree library, the space for exchange of actionable ideas in Riyadh, inshallah. The website is already live, so you could start exploring the virtual, let's say, version of that website, get a sense of the type of trees, the type of varieties that actually grow in Saudi Arabia that are indigenous, get a sense of the type of soil that's needed, the type of irrigation, the type of water. This will only grow from that point on. We're already talking to really cool and innovative solutions and trying to implement them on a tree-by-tree basis with the right kind of metrics. You'll see what works and what won't. So with that, maybe I'll wrap up, and happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you. Do we have any questions online, or if anyone has any questions here, happy to answer. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to our next dialogue. Thank you.